It never occurred to me that an iron gate could become my perfect weapon of destruction. But when the powerful HOA queen, Victoria Harrington, knelt down begging me to open the gate that morning, I knew every drop of sweat, every sleepless night, and every dollar I spent was worth it. You know, sometimes justice comes from the simplest things like a cheap lock and a little patience. I only wish I had recorded that moment on video. Are you watching from somewhere? Drop a comment below, because this story is guaranteed to make you laugh out loud. I used to be a structural engineer in Houston, good job, decent pay, but after 15 years, the concrete jungle started suffocating me. My father had been a country lawyer who raised me on stories of rural life before we moved to the city when I was 10. Those memories of open spaces never quite left me. So when I turned 42 and inherited some money from my uncle, I decided it was time for a change. I wanted land, animals, and the kind of peace you can't find between high-rises. I spent months searching until I found the perfect spot. 15 acres of beautiful Texas countryside just outside Austin, with a small creek running through it. There was enough flat land for a modest ranch house and rolling hills that caught the sunset just right. The property bordered a fancy subdivision called Oakwood Estates, but was far enough away that I wouldn't have neighbors breathing down my neck. What sealed the deal was the price, just within my budget, with enough left over to start building my dream ranch. The real estate agent, Lisa, seemed a bit hesitant when showing me the property, which I found odd, but she assured me there were no legal issues. Just one thing you should know, she said, this property isn't part of the Oakwood Estates HOA, even though it borders it. Sometimes they try to claim jurisdiction, but your deed clearly states you're independent. I didn't think much of it at the time. I was too excited about my 15 acres of freedom. I signed the papers in March and started planning immediately. By April, I had a basic blueprint for the ranch house and had ordered materials for the fencing. My plan was simple. Start with a modest operation, some chickens, a vegetable garden, maybe a couple of horses down the line, and gradually build it up. I wasn't looking to make a fortune. I just wanted a sustainable life away from the rat race. The property had an old dirt road that ran through one corner, connecting Oakwood Estates to the main highway. According to my deed, it was on my land. The previous owner had allowed residents to use it as a shortcut, and I didn't see any harm in continuing the arrangement. Little did I know this insignificant dirt path would become the centerpiece of the strangest battle of my life, one that would test my patience, my principles, and eventually lead to sweet, sweet victory. My first week on the property was pure bliss. I camped out in a trailer while waiting for construction to begin on the house. The mornings were crisp. The bird's song was my alarm clock, and I spent my days marking boundaries and clearing areas for my future garden beds. It wasn't until my 5th day there that I had my first encounter with the Oakwood Estates HOA, in the form of Victoria Harrington and her right-hand man, Robert Winters. They drove up in Victoria's gleaming white Mercedes SUV, parking right at the edge of my property. Victoria was tall and immaculately dressed in what looked like designer casual wear, if there is such a thing, with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and the kind of tan that comes from expensive vacations rather than honest work. Robert, a tall, stern-looking man with military posture and a crew cut, followed 2 steps behind her like a loyal sergeant. "Good morning," Victoria called out with practiced cheerfulness that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You must be the new owner. We're from the Oakwood Estates Homeowners Association. I'm Victoria Harrington, the president, and this is Robert Winters, our vice president. We thought we'd come by and welcome you to the neighborhood." I wiped my hands on my jeans and extended one to shake. "Ethan Reynolds. Nice to meet you both." Victoria barely touched my hand before letting go and glancing around my property with thinly veiled disapproval. "We just wanted to drop by and give you a copy of our HOA guidelines," she said, handing me a thick binder. "All properties in this area need to maintain certain standards to preserve our community values and property prices." I thumbed through the binder, filled with rules about everything from lawn height to mailbox colors, before looking back at her. "I appreciate the welcome, but my property isn't part of your HOA. My real estate agent and the deed were quite clear on that." Victoria's smile tightened. "Oh, there must be some misunderstanding. All properties in this area are under our jurisdiction. It's been that way for years. I kept my tone friendly, but firm. I'm afraid the legal documents say otherwise. I specifically bought this property because it's independent. But I'm planning to keep it nice. No junk cars or eyesores, I promise. Robert cleared his throat. Perhaps you misunderstood your paperwork. The HOA boundary extends to include this parcel. I stood my ground. I'm a former engineer. Reading technical documents is what I do. My land is not part of your HOA according to every legal document I signed. Victoria's pleasant mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something harder underneath. Well, we should sort this out quickly. Having a farm operation so close to our community could significantly impact property values. I'm sure you understand our concern. The way she said farm operation made it sound like I was planning to open a toxic waste dump. It's a small ranch, not a factory farm, I replied. And again, since I'm not part of your HOA, your property value concerns, while understandable, aren't really my legal obligation. Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly, but her smile remained fixed. Well, we'll have our attorney review the situation. In the meantime, welcome to the area. I'm sure we'll be seeing more of each other. As they turned to leave, Victoria paused. Oh, and you should know that the road running through your property, that's considered a community access point. We'll need that kept clear and maintained at all times. With that parting shot, they climbed back into her luxury SUV and drove away, leaving me standing there with the unwanted HOA binder and a growing sense of unease. Later that afternoon, while I was setting up solar-powered security cameras, a habit from city living, a compact Honda pulled up to my property. A petite woman with short brown hair stepped out, carrying what looked like a homemade pie. Hi there. I'm Olivia Reed, your neighbor from the edge of Oakwood. Thought I'd bring you a proper welcome, unlike Victoria's manufactured warmth. I invited her to join me for coffee at my makeshift campsite, and she accepted readily. I see you've already met the Harrington welcome wagon, she said, nodding toward the HOA binder I'd tossed aside. Words fast, I replied, pouring her coffee into a camping mug. They seem intense. Olivia laughed quickly and genuinely. That's one way to put it. Victoria runs that HOA like her personal kingdom. Her husband's a plastic surgeon, and they've got more money than sense. Robert just follows her lead. He's ex-military and loves rules and order. She took a sip of coffee. Just so you know, Victoria is also the top real estate agent in the area. She's been trying to buy up properties around the subdivision for years. Rumor has it she wants to expand Oakwood Estates and double her commission checks. The warning bells that had been faintly ringing in my head started clanging louder. She mentioned something about my property affecting their values. Think that's what this is about? Olivia nodded. Almost certainly. She tried the same tactics with me last year when I planted a wildflower meadow instead of the regulation Kentucky bluegrass. Called it unsightly vegetation. I only escaped her wrath because technically my lot is on the very edge of HOA territory, and I had a good lawyer who found a loophole in the bylaws about native plant conservation. She took another sip of coffee. I'd be careful if I were you. Victoria doesn't give up easily. I thanked her for the warning, but assured her I wasn't worried. My property wasn't part of their HOA, and I had the legal documents to prove it. What could they really do? Olivia's expression turned serious. That's exactly what the Ramirez family said before Victoria drove them out last year. Their property wasn't technically part of the HOA either, but she found ways to make their lives miserable, calling code enforcement daily, filing noise complaints, even getting the county to reassess their property tax. They eventually sold for 30% below market value to a holding company that Victoria's husband happens to be a silent partner in. As Olivia drove away after our coffee, her words hung in the air like a storm cloud. I'd faced my share of professional conflicts as an engineer, but this felt different, more personal, more invasive. Still, I wasn't about to let some power-hungry HOA president bully me off my dream property. If Victoria Harrington wanted a fight, she'd picked the wrong opponent. The next few weeks were peaceful. I started work on my chicken coop, planted my first vegetable beds, and contracted builders to begin construction on my modest ranch house. I was starting to think maybe Olivia had exaggerated Victoria's vendetta until the first letter arrived. It was printed on official-looking Oakwood Estates HOA letterhead, formally notifying me that my agricultural activities were in violation of community standards and demanding I cease all farm operations within 7 days or face escalating fines. I immediately called my old college buddy, Daniel Kelly, now a successful real estate attorney in Austin. He agreed to review my property documents right away. 2 days later, Daniel confirmed what I already knew. My property had never been part of the Oakwood Estates HOA, and their letter held absolutely no legal weight. "This is just intimidation tactics," Daniel said over the phone. "Ignore it for now, but document everything. If they escalate, we'll respond officially." I followed his advice and continued with my building projects, but also increased security measures around the property, installing more cameras and motion-activated lights. Just as Daniel predicted, a second letter arrived a week later. This one threatening legal action if I didn't comply with HOA regulations. The same day, I spotted Victoria and Robert at the edge of my property with measuring tapes and clipboards. I approached them casually, phone recording in my pocket. "Afternoon, folks. Can I help you with something?" Victoria startled slightly, but quickly recovered. "We're just verifying property line compliance for community right-of-way access," she said smoothly. "This road here needs to meet county standards for emergency vehicle access." I kept my tone neutral. "Interesting. Since this road is entirely on my property according to the survey markers, you're actually trespassing right now." Robert looked uncomfortable, but Victoria's smile didn't waver. "There seems to be some confusion about boundaries. The community has had access to this road for decades. It's an established easement." I nodded slowly. If there's an official, there's something poetic about watching powerful people unravel when they realize their schemes have backfired. That's exactly what happened the day Victoria Harrington showed up at my gate, demanding I let her through. But let me back up, because the road to that moment had been a long and strange one. After my initial showdown with Victoria and Robert, I spent the next few weeks focused on building my ranch. I finished the chicken coop, planted my first round of vegetables, tomatoes, peppers, squash, and started laying the foundation for the house. I was living the dream, one seed and one nail at a time. For a while, it even seemed like my formal letter to the HOA had worked. I went 2 whole weeks without any harassment. Olivia, my neighbor, came by with her kids to see the chickens and try fresh veggies from the garden. We were becoming friends, and her insights into the neighborhood helped me understand more about the community I was now part of. But peace rarely lasts when you're dealing with people like Victoria. Exactly 23 days after my last HOA encounter, I woke up to the sound of heavy machinery near my property line. Through my binoculars, I saw a construction crew drilling holes for what looked like massive fence posts. I threw on clothes and rushed over. The foreman, a weathered man in his 50s, told me they were hired by the Oakwood Estates HOA to build a security fence along the border. He showed me permits that looked official enough. Technically, they were only working on their own land. But the placement of the fence was anything but innocent. It completely cut off my direct access to the main road. The only way in or out would be a long, rough backcountry route that turned into a muddy nightmare during rain. And more importantly, it blocked access to the dirt road that the water district needed to reach their pump station on my property. I called my lawyer, Daniel, immediately. He arrived that afternoon, and we watched as the fence went up fast. Concrete footings, metal reinforcements, 6 feet high. "They're being clever," Daniel said grimly. "The fence is on their land, so they don't need your permission. But it's clearly meant to pressure you by making your property less accessible and less valuable." I pointed to where the fence crossed the road. "What about the utility easement? Won't this block access to the pump station?" Daniel nodded. "That's where they've made a mistake. They can build a fence on their side, but they can't legally block a recorded utility easement, especially one that serves their own community's water supply." A slow smile crept across my face. "So they're cutting off their own access?" Daniel grinned. "Exactly. And that gives us leverage." We decided to let them finish the fence. Once it was done, the water district would realize their access had been blocked, and Victoria would have created a problem for herself with her own neighbors. Day by day, the fence rose like a concrete wall between me and the subdivision. By Friday, it was complete, except for one thing. A single access point remained at the road, fitted with a heavy metal gate and an industrial-grade lock. The construction foreman handed me a key before leaving, saying Victoria had instructed him to give it as a courtesy. I examined the key and the gate. Victoria had, in effect, admitted that the road was mine by giving me control of the access point. But she'd also boxed herself in, because that gate now blocked the only way for maintenance crews to reach the water infrastructure that served her entire community. That night, I replaced the lock with my own high-security model and installed extra cameras around the gate. I put up a sign, *permitted road access, by permission only. Contact property owner for details, *. I even made a simple website with an online form where authorized personnel could request access with 24 hours notice. Everything was completely legal. Victoria had unintentionally handed me the upper hand by installing a gate on my road and giving me the key. I called Daniel to confirm my plan was solid. "It's perfect," he laughed. "You've turned their strong-arm tactic into an advantage. Just make sure you're reasonable about giving access to the utility company, and you're on solid legal ground." That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. The fence might limit my access to the main road, but it had given me something far more valuable: control over access to Oakwood Estate's water supply. The showdown came early Monday morning. I was enjoying coffee on my trailer's little deck when a luxury SUV screeched to a halt at my gate. Victoria stormed out, face flushed with anger, Robert trailing behind, clearly uncomfortable. She pounded on the gate, rattling the chain. "Reynolds, open this gate immediately." I took my time walking over, coffee mug still in hand. "Good morning, Victoria." "Robert, what can I do for you?" She shoved her phone through the bars, showing a photo of my new sign. "What is the meaning of this? You cannot block access to a community road." I kept my tone calm. "It's not a community road. It's a private road on my property, with a limited easement for utility access only. Your own actions, building that fence and installing this gate, have confirmed that fact." Victoria's perfectly manicured finger jabbed at me. "This is obstruction. The HOA will sue you for this." I smiled politely. "You're welcome to try. But before you do, you might want to check with the water utility about their access requirements for the main pump station that serves your entire community." For the first time since I'd met her, Victoria was speechless. The color drained from her face as the full weight of her mistake hit her. Robert looked from her to me, slowly putting it together. "The pump station?" he asked hesitantly. Then he stopped mid-sentence as realization struck. "The utility easement is for the pump station access." Victoria recovered quickly. "This is blackmail," she hissed. "You're holding an entire community's water supply hostage." I shook my head. "Not at all. I'm simply exercising my property rights, the same rights you've been trying to violate since I moved in." It never crossed my mind that a simple iron gate could become my most powerful tool for justice. But when Victoria Harrington, the iron-fisted queen of the HOA, showed up that morning, practically on her knees begging me to open it, I knew every drop of sweat, every sleepless night, and every dollar I'd spent had been worth it. Sometimes, the sweetest victories come from the simplest things: a cheap lock, a little patience, and a clear understanding of your rights. I only wish I'd recorded that moment for YouTube. If you're out there watching this story unfold, drop a comment below. I promise, it's one of those tales that'll have you laughing out loud. I used to be a structural engineer in Houston, solid job, decent paycheck, but after 15 years, the city started to feel like a cage. My dad was a country lawyer who raised me on stories of rural life before we moved to the city when I was 10. Those memories of open fields and quiet nights never quite left me. So when I turned 42 and inherited a bit of money from my uncle, I knew it was time for a change. I wanted land, animals, and the kind of peace you can't find between skyscrapers. I spent months searching until I found the perfect spot: 15 acres of beautiful Texas countryside just outside Austin. There was a small creek running through it, enough flat land for a modest ranch house, and rolling hills that caught the sunset just right. The property bordered a fancy subdivision called Oakwood Estates, but it was far enough away that I wouldn't have neighbors constantly peeking over my fence. What really sealed the deal was the price. It was just within my budget, with enough left over to start building my dream ranch. The real estate agent, Lisa, seemed a bit hesitant when showing me the property, which I found odd. But she assured me there were no legal issues. "Just one thing you should know," she said. "This property isn't part of the Oakwood Estates HOA, even though it borders it. Sometimes they try to claim jurisdiction, but your deed clearly states you're independent." I didn't think much of it at the time. I was too excited about my 15 acres of freedom. I signed the papers in March and started planning immediately. By April, I had a basic blueprint for the ranch house and had ordered materials for the fencing. My plan was simple: start small, some chickens, a vegetable garden, maybe a couple of horses down the line, and gradually build it up. I wasn't looking to get rich. I just wanted a sustainable life away from the hustle of the city. The property had an old dirt road that ran through one corner, connecting Oakwood Estates to the main highway. According to my deed, it was on my land. The previous owner had allowed residents to use it as a shortcut, and I didn't see any harm in continuing the arrangement. Little did I know this simple dirt road would become the center of the strangest battle of my life, one that would test my patience, my principles, and eventually lead to a sweet, sweet victory. My first week on the property was pure bliss. I camped out in a trailer while waiting for construction to begin on the house. The mornings were crisp, birdsong was my alarm clock, and I spent my days marking boundaries and clearing areas for future garden beds. It wasn't until my 5th day there that I had my first encounter with the Oakwood Estates HOA, in the form of Victoria Harrington and her right-hand man, Robert Winters.